All right, jumping right in. Big story. Rugby world's buzzing about it.
Yeah.
American investment in South African rugby. It fell apart, though.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, huge deal.
We've got this Rugby Pass article, lays it all out, rejected deal, the whole thing. Plus, we've got a ton of fan comments reacting to similar stuff in rugby.
Right, right.
And it's interesting because it goes way beyond just like money,
Oh, absolutely.
national pride, soul of the sport.
Yeah.
What's next for South African rugby? Huge powerhouse.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest, one of the best.
Exactly.
And you know, what makes it even more interesting is the deal wasn't just straight up, here's the Springboks, you buy them.
Right.
It was the Ackerley Sports Group, American group. They own other teams. Leeds United Football Club, for example. They wanted to invest in exchange for commercial rights.
Okay, so that's the key, right? This commercial rights thing. That's what we need to unpack. What does that actually mean, like, in this situation?
So think of it this way. You've got the Springboks, you know, the symbol of South African rugby. But behind the team, there's this whole business machine.
Yeah.
Broadcasting deals, sponsorships, merchandise, even using the Springbok brand for marketing.
Oh, I see.
All that stuff. That's commercial rights. And they generate a ton of money for South African rugby.
So the Ackerley Group, they were basically saying, we'll pump in money, we've got expertise, we can boost those revenue streams.
Yeah.
But they wanted a say
Right.
in how those rights are used.
Exactly. You got it. So on paper, win-win maybe. South African rugby gets this huge cash injection. The Ackerley Group, they get a piece of this global brand.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting. 7 of the 13 member unions, the ones that make up South African rugby, voted no.
Wow.
It didn't reach that 75% they needed. And that's where it gets really, really interesting.
Yes, so why? Why did it hit a wall? The article, it talks about fan anxieties, but it doesn't really dig into specifics.
Yeah, and, you know, to understand that, we have to look a little bit deeper. Rugby in South Africa, it's not just a sport.
Right.
It's woven into the whole country. Think about 1995. Rugby World Cup. Springboks win. It was this huge symbol of unity, reconciliation.
Oh, yeah, after apartheid. Powerful moment.
Incredibly powerful, cemented rugby's place in South Africa. You know, hearts and minds.
So you bring in this outside group, right?
Yeah.
Foreign entity, especially one with no real connection to rugby in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's got to trigger those protective instincts.
100%. Now, the Rugby Pass article, it doesn't say exactly what the union said,
Right.
but reading the fan comments, reacting to similar situations, you can get a sense of the worries.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine you have something precious, represents your history, your identity. Are you going to just hand over control of that?
To someone who might not get it.
Exactly, someone who might not get it.
Yeah.
We've seen this happen. Look at English football.
Yeah.
All these foreign owners came in. Some had tons of money, but, you know, maybe not the best motives.
Yeah.
Big debates about the game changing, local traditions, were they being eroded, all that.
So South African rugby, they're facing something similar.
Very similar.
On one hand, financial growth. On the other hand, protecting something really cultural.
It's a dilemma.
Big time.
And that's what makes this whole thing so interesting. It's not just about a deal. It's about what rugby means to South Africa.
Yeah.
The fan comments really highlight that. There's this real fear that foreign ownership, it could lead to decisions that are all about profit. And they forget about the soul of the sport.
Yeah. So it's not just the money. It's about control. What direction will South African rugby go in? Under foreign influence.
Exactly. And that brings us to another part of this story. The Ackerley Sports Group themselves. Who are they? What could they bring to the table? That'll help us understand, I think, the appeal, but also the apprehension about them being involved.
Okay. So who are they? They own Leeds United, right?
Okay.
What else do we know?
They're big. In the sports world, I mean. They own all sorts of sports franchises. They've got a history of investing in teams that could grow.
Right.
Leeds United is a good example. Historic English football club. Gives you an idea of how they operate.
So they know how to manage teams.
Oh, for sure.
They get the business side of sports.
Yeah, very much so.
But do they know rugby?
That's the question.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the skepticism from South African fans. They're big in football. But rugby, especially in South Africa, that's different.
Yeah.
And that lack of familiarity, it's a risk. Especially for people who are, you know, really protective of tradition.
It makes sense. You wouldn't want someone running things who doesn't understand the game.
Yeah.
But on the other side, what good could they have brought to South African Rugby.
Well, I've got money.
Right.
Lots of it. They could have
Okay.
put serious cash into the sport, development, player salaries, and don't forget, global networks, marketing know-how.
Right.
They could have opened up new markets. For South African Rugby, got them more international sponsors, really boosted the Springboks brand worldwide.
So it's that classic tension, money versus control.
Yeah.
The unions are trying to weigh it all, right?
Yeah.
Benefits and risks. And in this case, the risks won.
Seems that way.
It's a tough situation. It really is.
And it's happening all over the world of sports. How do you bring in investment and grow the game without losing its soul? That's what we're really looking at.
Yeah, that's it. The soul of the game.
Yeah.
And this whole deep dive, it's right at the heart of that question.
Absolutely. We're not just talking business. We're talking about what rugby means to South Africa.
Exactly. It's a big deal.
It is. So, yeah, this whole investment thing really stirred things up. Lots of anxiety in South African rugby. But the story's not over.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
The Ackerley Group, they've got till the end of December 2024
Right.
to make another offer, a revised proposal.
So it's not a no. It's more like a not yet.
Yeah.
But what would it take to get a deal done?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you balance those huge financial benefits with the cultural worries?
It's tough, really tough, but
Yeah.
not impossible. I think one thing that comes up a lot in the fan comments is transparency. The Ackerley Group, they need to do more than just show their money.
Right.
They got to really explain their vision for South African rugby long term.
So less, we're going to make you rich.
Yeah.
And more, here's how we see the Springboks growing globally, but, still respecting their roots.
You got it. They need to show, they get it. They understand what rugby means to South Africa.
Yeah.
It's not just a game. It's history, social impact, national pride. It can't just be about the money. It has to be a real partnership where both sides care about the sport.
So, building trust, showing those unions that they're not just there to take, but to give something back, to help South African rugby grow in a healthy way.
That's it. And maybe they involve South Africans more in the whole process. What if they had a board with people from SARU, the unions, even some old players?
Right.
That would help, because then it's not just some foreign company calling all the shots.
It's a tough balance.
Right.
Investment without losing control.
Yeah.
Some fans even said any deal would mean compromise.
Yeah.
From both sides.
Yeah, that's a good point. SARU, they might have to let go of some control of the business side. Maybe give Ackerley the lead on international marketing, stuff like that. And Ackerley, they'd have to listen. Yeah. Be sensitive to the local issues. Make sure decisions align with, South African rugby's values.
It's like a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
You got to find that overlap.
Exactly.
Where everyone gets something. But no one gets completely swallowed up.
Yeah.
It's amazing how this one deal, it's showing us the bigger picture, what's happening in rugby, and honestly, in all sports.
Yeah, it's a microcosm of what's happening. Rugby, it used to be this amateur thing, local communities. Now it's global. Big business, big money. Private equity firms, they're all over it. They see the potential, the profits, the brand expansion.
It makes you think, will rugby even be the same in 10, 20 years? Will these investments become normal? Was it lose, its character?
Yeah.
Becoming more commercial?
I think about that all the time. And the answer is, I don't know. It's a real possibility that those traditional structures, they're going to change. Local communities might lose that connection to their teams, but there's also the potential for good. More investment, more global exposure, growth for the sport at all levels.
Progress versus tradition.
Yeah.
Do you stick with what you know, or risk losing something important by embracing change?
Tough choices.
I feel like we're talking about saving the rainforest.
And just like the rainforest, there needs to be a way to find that balance. Conservation and development. In rugby, it's finding a way to grow without, losing the heart of the sport. That's what this whole deep dive has been about.
It's a pivotal moment, not just for South Africa, for rugby everywhere. This one decision, it could be like a domino. It'll influence how other countries, other organizations think about investment, about going global. It's like we're seeing a case study in how to navigate this new era of sports.
Yeah, but I don't even know the ending yet. Ackerley Group, they get a second shot. They can learn from this, change their approach.
Right.
But will they do what it takes? Will they be willing to compromise? Will South African rugby even be open to that?
It comes down to this. Money above everything else.
Yeah.
Or finding a way to protect their heritage while still growing.
Values. Identity. It's about what really matters to the people who love this sport. And that's what makes this so interesting. It's not just a business analysis. It's looking into the heart of South African rugby.
You've put it perfectly. It's not just numbers and contracts. It's passion, history, the future of a sport that's tied to a whole nation. Before we wrap up, gotta ask, this whole situation that sparks so much debate, not just in South Africa, what do you think it tells us about South African rugby's soul?
Wow, that's a big question. I think the answer, it's in how the fans have reacted. It's all so passionate. They love the sport. They want to protect it. There's so much national pride tied up with rugby in South Africa.
It's not just a game to them. It's part of who they are.
Yeah, it's their identity, their history, their culture.
And that's why this decision, it's so emotional. It's way more than just business.
Right.
You've done a great job explaining all this, all the complexities. And you're right, the fans, their passion, it says everything. They're not just watching. They're a part of this.
Well,
Their voices matter.
100%. They're shaping the future of rugby. It's not just about what executives decide. It's everyone, the whole community.
That collective responsibility, we see that a lot in South African rugby. It shows how powerful sport can be. Brings people together, makes them fight for what they believe in.
And that's what makes this so compelling. It's not just a business deal. It's about that spirit, the spirit of South African rugby, and how it unites a nation.
So much to think about. It's like the future of South African rugby, maybe even all of rugby, is hanging in the balance. Feels like we're watching one of those slow-motion car crashes you see in movies.
Yeah.
All this history, a whole nation's hopes, riding on every little decision.
Absolutely.
So big picture time. What's the one thing you want our listeners to remember from all this?
South African rugby, it's at a crossroads.
Yeah.
Tradition and ambition, they're kind of battling it out. The next few months, they're huge, not just for this deal,
Right.
but for investment in rugby, going global.
Yeah.
What it even means to be South African rugby.
The soul of the sport.
Yeah, yeah.
And those decisions, they're going to have a ripple effect.
Oh, yeah.
Way beyond South Africa.
Huge.
Makes you realize sports, it's never just standing still.
Nope.
It's always changing.
Always.
Reflecting everything, society, money, even politics.
Absolutely.
But, okay, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
there's this one question I just got to ask.
Okay.
Been bugging me this whole time. Shoot.
What would it actually take for a deal like this to work in South Africa? How do you bridge that gap?
$1 million question, right?
It really is.
Looking at all those fan comments, I'd say transparency,
Okay.
real partnership, those are non-negotiables.
Can't budge on those.
Nope. Ackerley, or anyone who wants to invest.
Yeah.
They got to go deeper than just business as usual.
Right.
They have to understand, really get it, South African rugby's history, its social impact, what it means to the nation.
So not just throwing money at it.
Right. It's got to be more than that.
Showing they really care about the sport, not just the profit.
Exactly.
What if they, proposed a council or something?
Ooh, interesting.
With people from SARU, the unions, players, even some fans.
Now that would be something.
Showing they're willing to listen, to learn.
Make decisions that work for
So
everybody.
that's an Ubuntu approach,
Oh, I like that. That's perfect for this.
That South African philosophy?
Shared humanity connection.
Yeah, exactly.
If Ackerley can tap into that, show they really want what's best for South African rugby.
They may just have a shot.
But even then, SARU, the unions, they'd have to compromise too, right?
Oh, absolutely. No partnership is perfectly equal.
Right.
SARU might have to loosen the reins a bit commercially.
Okay.
Maybe give some leeway on international marketing, branding.
I see.
Finding that sweet spot where both sides win, but also keep what matters most.
Man, a lot to think about. This story, it's not over yet.
Nope.
Ackerley's working on a new proposal.
Eyes of the world on South Africa.
Can they find a way to make the money work, but keep the soul of the sport?
It's a huge gamble, and the stakes are high, not just for rugby.
Right.
This is about values, about who we are, what matters when the whole world's changing around us.
Well said. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
It's a story that's still going, so we'll keep you updated.
Definitely.
And in the meantime, keep those questions coming.
Keep thinking, keep discussing.
This is a conversation that matters for South Africa, for rugby, for all of us.